Look around you for a second. Are the people you're surrounded by building you up or quietly pulling you back into comfort and conformity? What if I told you that 95% of the crowd is living on autopilot, repeating the same habits, the same fears, the same excuses every single day? The real question is, will you stay safely inside the average, or will you dare to break free and rise above it? While most of the crowd believed automobiles were only for the rich, Henry Ford refused to follow that thinking. He was mocked, doubted, and told his ideas were unrealistic. Factories around him followed tradition, slow production, high prices, and limited access. But Ford broke away from the standard thinking of the crowd and introduced the moving assembly line in 1913, making cars affordable for ordinary people. He didn't just ignore the crowd. He redesigned the system that the crowd accepted as normal. That one bold decision changed transportation, industry, and the modern world. While 95% accepted the way things are, Henry Ford created the way things should be. Before a man ever changes his life, before a woman ever steps beyond the boundaries she once believed were permanent, something far more important must first take place within the quiet chambers of the mind: awareness. The most dangerous trap in the world is not poverty, not lack of opportunity, not even failure itself. It is the invisible, comfortable, familiar trap of the crowd. And it is invisible precisely because it looks normal. It sounds normal. It feels normal. You were born into it, educated inside it, and praised whenever you properly conformed to it. From the earliest days of your life, the majority has gently, and sometimes forcefully, shaped the course of your thinking. You were told what success looks like, how long to work, what risks were acceptable, what dreams were realistic. You were applauded when you stayed within the lines, and warned when your imagination ran too far beyond them. And so, little by little, your world grew smaller, not because it had to, but because it was expected to. Yet here is the great revelation. The majority is not the standard of truth. It is the standard of repetition. The crowd does not choose what is right, what is possible, or what is meaningful. The crowd simply repeats what it has been taught generation after generation, without ever pausing long enough to ask the most powerful question a human being can ask. Is this really true for me? Most men and women live their entire lives without ever recognizing that they are following a script written by strangers. Their fears are inherited. Their limitations are borrowed. Their beliefs are secondhand. They walk the same streets, think the same thoughts, speak the same phrases, and wonder, silently, why life feels so small, so predictable, so unfulfilled. The first step out of average is not action. It is recognition. Recognition that you have been influenced. Recognition that comfort has a cost. Recognition that the reason most people get the same results is because they follow the same patterns. The crowd is not evil. It is simply unconscious. And unconscious living is the highest form of human tragedy. When a person finally becomes aware of this invisible trap, something extraordinary happens. A quiet rebellion begins. A private revolution takes root inside the mind. You may still stand among the many, go to the same places, and perform the same duties, but inwardly you are no longer the same. You are now a thinker among followers, a questioner among acceptors, a creator among repeaters, and in that moment, when awareness replaces unconscious obedience, the first chain is broken. Once awareness dawns, once a person recognizes that the crowd has quietly shaped their thinking, a new and uncomfortable responsibility appears. Awareness alone is not enough. It must be followed by questioning. For if you do not challenge the beliefs that have been handed to you, you will continue to live by them, even while knowing they were never truly your own. The average life is built on unquestioned assumptions. Assumptions about money, it's hard to make. Assumptions about success, only a few are meant for it. Assumptions about ability. I'm just not that type of person. These ideas are repeated so often by so many that they take on the appearance of truth. But repetition does not make a thing true. It only makes it familiar. The great men and women who have risen above the ordinary in every age did not begin by having better circumstances. They began by daring to ask better questions. They looked at what everyone else accepted and quietly wondered, why must it be this way? Who decided this was the limit? What if the opposite were true? That single inner act of questioning, silent, invisible, personal, was the moment their future began to change. Most people do not question because questioning separates you from the group. It causes discomfort. It makes others uneasy. The crowd prefers agreement. It rewards similarity. But progress is always born in disagreement. Every advancement in civilization, every invention, every breakthrough in thought began when one mind refused to accept the popular conclusion. When you question common beliefs, you begin to see cracks in the walls that once seemed solid. You realize that normal is often nothing more than tradition without examination. You discover that many of the rules you live by were created by people no more intelligent, no more gifted, and no more inspired than you are now. And here is a remarkable truth: your life will never rise higher than the belief system you refuse to challenge. As long as you accept a limited definition of what is possible, your actions will reflect that limitation. You will aim low, move cautiously, and settle early. But the moment you doubt the old belief, a new potential is born. This is not an invitation to rebel blindly. It is an invitation to think consciously, to examine your thoughts as a jeweler examines a rare stone, turning them in the light, looking for flaws, questioning their origin. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Does it serve the future I desire? Or does it keep me tied to the past of someone else? The crowd never asks these questions. That is why the crowd remains stuck in the same place, generation after generation. But the person who begins to question begins to awaken. And awakening is the beginning of freedom. When you challenge a belief, you reclaim ownership of your mind. You step out of inherited thinking and into intentional living. And with that step, small as it may appear, you move further away from the 95% and closer to the life that only a conscious, courageous thinker can create. Once a person has recognized the invisible influence of the crowd, and once they have begun to question the beliefs that society has quietly placed in the mind, the next step follows naturally, and it is often the most difficult of all: separation. Not always in distance, but in influence. Not always physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. This is the moment when you must begin to loosen the ties of negative social conditioning that have wrapped around you since childhood. Every environment you step into leaves fingerprints on your thinking. Every conversation, every opinion, every complaint, every excuse you hear from those around you becomes a small suggestion planted in your subconscious mind. The average person does not guard against this influence. They simply absorb it, like a sponge absorbs water, until it shapes the very way they see themselves and the world. Negative social conditioning is subtle. It often disguises itself as concern. Be careful. Don't aim too high. That's not realistic. People like us don't do things like that. These words may come from well-meaning friends, relatives, teachers, and co-workers, people who care, perhaps, but who are themselves trapped in the same invisible cage. They are not trying to hurt you. But good intentions do not cancel damaging influence. If you wish to rise above average, you must understand this truth: you cannot soar with eagles while listening to chickens. Your environment either expands your vision or shrinks it. It either feeds your courage or nourishes your fear. It either moves you toward growth or slowly pulls you back toward comfort and conformity. Every time you sit among those who complain, gossip, criticize, and doubt, you are breathing in mental poison, and over time it weakens your belief in yourself. To separate yourself from negative conditioning does not always mean cutting people off. In many cases, it simply means changing the way you respond and what you allow to enter your mind. It means no longer participating in conversations that drain your energy. It means refusing to give your attention to ideas that reinforce limitation. It means choosing silence, learning, and reflection over noisy, unproductive chatter. You begin to choose your influences deliberately. You listen more to those who speak about ideas than those who speak only of problems. You seek the words of thinkers, builders, creators, and visionaries, even if you must do so through books and recordings when such people are not physically present in your life. You replace accidental influence with intentional influence. This separation can feel lonely. When you begin to think differently, act differently, aim differently, you no longer blend in. And the crowd notices. You may be questioned, mocked, or misunderstood. But remember, the crowd only fights what it does not understand, and it never understands the mindset of those who refuse to remain average. In that quiet separation, however, a transformation begins. Your thoughts grow clearer. Your confidence strengthens. Your dreams become louder than the opinions of others. And for the first time, you begin to hear your own voice. Not the echo of the crowd, but the true voice of potential that has always lived within you, waiting patiently to be heard. Once you have recognized the influence of the crowd, questioned its beliefs, and begun to separate yourself from its negative conditioning, a great and necessary space is created within you. Where old voices once dominated, there is now silence. And into that silence comes the next essential task of the person who intends to rise above average. You must define your own standard of excellence. The tragedy of the average life is not simply that it is small, it is that it is borrowed. Most people never decide for themselves what kind of person they intend to become. They are handed a definition of success by society, by family, by circumstance, and they attempt to live up to that borrowed image even when it does not reflect the deepest truth of who they are. They live according to expectations instead of intentions. But you are not here to live by someone else's standard. You are here to create your own. A personal standard of excellence is a private contract between you and your future. It is the decision made in the quiet of your own mind that you will no longer measure yourself by the low bar of the many, but by the high vision of who you are capable of becoming. It is not about being better than others. It is about being better than the former version of yourself. The average person asks, "What do others expect from me?" The exceptional person asks, "What is the best I can possibly give?" When you define your own standard, you take back control of your life. You decide what discipline means to you. You decide what effort looks like. You decide how you will treat others, how you will use your time, how you will develop your mind, how you will guard your health, and how you will shape your future. No longer do you drift along the current of popular behavior. You now move according to a chosen direction. This new standard may require more from you than anyone else ever has. It may demand that you wake earlier, work harder, study longer, think deeper, and act more courageously than the people around you. But that is precisely its purpose. A standard that asks little will produce little. A standard that demands excellence will awaken greatness. And here is the most powerful truth of all. You will rise, not to the level of your goals, but to the level of your standards. If your standard is comfort, you will achieve comfort. If your standard is survival, you will merely survive. But if your standard is excellence, in thought, character, effort, and contribution, then your life will begin to reflect that higher command. The crowd does not understand this. They move only when forced. They change only when pain demands it. But the individual who has chosen a personal standard of excellence moves by purpose. They are no longer pushed by circumstance. They are pulled by vision. And slowly, almost without noticing it at first, you begin to change. Your decisions become sharper. Your boundaries become stronger. Your confidence becomes unshakable. You are no longer driven by approval or fear of disapproval. You are driven by a quiet, powerful inner voice that says, "This is who I have decided to be." That is the moment you truly begin to separate yourself from the 95%. Not because you want to be different, but because you have finally decided to be your best. Once you have established your own standard of excellence, another change begins to take place, quiet, steady, and profoundly powerful. You begin to step away from the gravitational pull of group thinking and move into the rare and liberating realm of independent thought. This is the point where a person no longer borrows opinions as if they were facts, but instead learns to weigh, measure, examine, and decide for themselves. The crowd does not think, it reacts. It moves according to emotion, popularity, trend, and fear of disapproval. One voice becomes 10, 10 become 100, and soon 1,000 people are repeating a belief that no one ever truly examined. This is how false ideas gain strength. This is how limitations become truth. And this is how average is mass-produced. Independent thinking is the refusal to accept something simply because many believe it. It is the discipline of asking, does this make sense? Is this true? Is this useful for the life I wish to build? It does not reject ideas automatically, nor does it accept them easily. It places every thought on the table of reason and holds it up to the light of purpose. To most people, this kind of thinking feels uncomfortable. It makes them stand alone in a world that praises agreement. And so they avoid it. They would rather be accepted in a group of the wrong than stand alone for what is right. But the highest achievements of mankind have never been built by committees of average minds. They were created by individuals who trusted their own ability to think above the noise. When you replace group thinking with independent thinking, you reclaim your greatest power, the power of choice. You no longer choose because everyone is doing it. You choose because you have examined the path and found it worthy. You no longer fear being different because your confidence is not built on numbers but on understanding. And understanding is the foundation of all progress. This does not mean you ignore the wisdom of others. On the contrary, you listen carefully to teachers, authors, mentors, and great minds of the past and present. But you listen not as a follower and not as a rebel. You listen as a thinker. You gather ideas. Compare them, test them, refine them, and then decide which ones deserve a place in your life. The crowd leaks energy by endlessly discussing opinions. The independent thinker gathers energy by forming conclusions. The crowd drifts in uncertainty. The independent thinker moves in direction. As you begin to think for yourself, you will see opportunities where others see obstacles. You will find possibilities where others see walls. You will feel a new level of confidence, not because everything is easy, but because you now trust the power of your own mind. And there is no greater ally in this world than a mind that has learned how to guide itself. In time, others may begin to notice. They may ask for your advice, your opinion, your leadership. They may say, "There's something different about the way you think." But by then, you will understand an important secret. You are not special. You have simply decided to use the mind God gave you instead of allowing the crowd to use it for you. And that single decision repeated daily is the dividing line between the 95% and the extraordinary few who shape the world in their image. After the mind has been disciplined to think independently, the next great transformation must take place in the realm of habit, for it is action, repeated daily, that gives physical form to every thought, every belief, and every standard you have chosen. The difference between the average life and the exceptional one is not found in dramatic, one-time decisions. It is found in the quiet, often unnoticed routines of each day. The crowd chooses what is easy. It selects comfort over effort, entertainment over education, rest over responsibility, and because most people follow the same path of least resistance, their lives unfold in strikingly similar patterns, similar incomes, similar health, similar frustrations, similar regrets, not because they lack potential, but because they have surrendered to habit without direction. You, however, have made a different decision. By this stage, you understand that success is unnatural to the undisciplined mind. It must be chosen. It must be practiced. It must be shaped one habit at a time. To adopt habits that the majority avoid is to willingly step into discomfort. It is to wake up when your body pleads for more sleep. It is to read when others scroll and are entertained. It is to practice when others are resting. It is to prepare when others are postponing. It is to save when others are spending. These are not glamorous acts. No crowd will applaud them, but in them lies the architecture of an uncommon life. Bad habits are formed by neglect. Good habits are formed by design, and the mind, whether disciplined or not, is a faithful servant to whatever you teach it through repetition. If you teach it laziness, it will find reasons to remain idle. If you teach it discipline, it will find strength even in fatigue. In time, what was once difficult becomes natural. What was once resisted becomes automatic. And what was once impossible becomes inevitable. The crowd never understands this stage because it demands delayed gratification. And the average person cannot see beyond the present moment. They trade the future for the present again and again, until the future arrives empty. But the exceptional few live differently. They are guided not by the pleasure of today, but by the vision of tomorrow. Each disciplined habit you build becomes a silent ally working on your behalf. While you sleep, they work. While you doubt, they persist. While the world distracts, they move you forward. And slowly, you begin to notice a gap forming between yourself and those who once walked beside you. Not because you are superior, but because you have chosen a path they refuse to walk. It is important to remember that habits do not care about motivation. Motivation fades, emotion changes, circumstance shifts, but a habit once formed remains loyal. It is the invisible engine beneath success. It is the unseen hand guiding the exceptional life. And as you continue to adopt the habits that the majority avoids, a profound identity shift occurs. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who does. And in that identity, the 95% fades farther into the distance, while your own path rises clearly before you, strong, steady, and unstoppable. As you continue to rise beyond the thinking, habits, and limitations of the crowd, one truth becomes increasingly clear: no one rises alone for long. The environment that once held you back must now be replaced by an environment that lifts you higher. And this is where the next essential step unfolds in your journey away from the 95%. You must consciously build a circle that elevates you, not confines you. The average life is lived among average thinking. Words of doubt pass freely. Excuses are exchanged like common currency. Fear is normalized, and small dreams are encouraged. In such an atmosphere, even the strongest ambition can slowly fade. A seed cannot grow in poisoned soil, no matter how great its potential may be. But the exceptional life is cultivated in a different kind of environment. It is surrounded by ideas that challenge, by conversations that inspire, by standards that demand more, and by examples that prove what is possible. Your circle, whether physical or mental, becomes the silent architect of your future. Now, understand this clearly. You are not simply influenced by the people around you, you are shaped by them. Their language becomes part of your inner dialogue. Their expectations become the boundaries of your imagination. Their courage or their fear quietly seeps into your own decisions. You may believe you are strong enough to resist this effect, but even the strongest mind must choose its company carefully. To rise above average, you cannot continue to be surrounded by those who are content to remain there. This does not mean looking down upon others. There is no arrogance in growth. Instead, there is gratitude, gratitude for the lessons learned, for the journey shared, and for the realization that you are now being called to move forward. Some people come into our lives as companions, others come as teachers, and some come only as reminders of who we must not remain. As you begin to seek out a new circle, something remarkable happens. You discover that there are individuals in this world who speak the same language of possibility. They do not complain about the darkness. They search for the light. They do not dwell on problems. They discuss solutions. They do not laugh at discipline. They live by it. And in their presence you feel yourself stretching, growing, becoming more. In many cases, these people may not even be physically present. They may speak to you through pages of a book, through recorded words, through ideas preserved across time, but their influence is just as real. The mind does not know the difference between physical company and mental companionship. It only knows what it is exposed to regularly. When you choose your circle with intention, you give yourself a powerful, almost unfair advantage. In moments of weakness, their example will strengthen you. In moments of doubt, their courage will steady you. In moments of confusion, their wisdom will guide you. And gradually you begin to resemble the company you keep. This is a law as reliable as gravity. You will rise or fall to the level of your environment. You cannot live among the limited and become limitless. You cannot walk with the unmotivated and remain inspired. You cannot surround yourself with the undecided and expect to live with clarity and direction. But when you place yourself in the presence of growth, intention, discipline, and vision, even from a distance, you begin to rise naturally. Effort feels lighter. Hope feels stronger. Direction feels clearer. And the dream you once questioned now feels not only possible but inevitable. To build a circle that elevates you is not merely a strategy. It is a declaration to the world and to yourself: I have decided the kind of life I will live, and I choose to walk with those who are walking in the same direction. And with that decision, another invisible door closes behind you, and another extraordinary path opens ahead. Once your mind has been freed from the influence of the crowd, once your habits have been disciplined, and once your circle is carefully chosen to elevate rather than confine you, a simple but profound truth becomes clear: knowledge alone does nothing. Action changes everything. This is the next step in breaking free from the 95% you take action when others only talk. The majority of people live in perpetual motion, not of progress, but of discussion. They plan endlessly, argue endlessly, and dream endlessly. Yet the world does not change because of conversation, it changes because of execution. One man's idea carried into action is worth more than 1,000 discussions among the timid, the comfortable, and the average. The crowd talks about opportunities. The exceptional few seize them. The crowd debates risks. The few calculate and then act anyway. The crowd studies but postpones. The few study and then begin immediately. Motivation may start a person. Courage may sustain them for a moment. But action is the engine of transformation, and without it, vision remains invisible. Consider the innovators, the leaders, the pioneers of history. Henry Ford did not simply think about revolutionizing industry, he acted. Edison did not merely imagine the light bulb, he tested thousands of experiments. Gandhi did not merely dream of freedom, he mobilized millions through disciplined action. Each of these individuals understood a principle that most ignore: ideas are worthless until applied. Taking action requires courage. It requires pushing through fear, discomfort, and doubt. It requires a willingness to be misunderstood, to make mistakes, to face temporary failure. The crowd fears these things. They fear the judgment of others, the embarrassment of trying, and the unknown path. But you must understand something critical. Nothing significant has ever been achieved by staying safe within the average. Action is not about recklessness. It is about intentional, consistent, deliberate steps toward a clearly defined goal. Each step may be small. Each step may feel insufficient. Yet in aggregate, these steps produce momentum. And momentum, once established, becomes unstoppable. The crowd may continue to chatter. They may question. They may even ridicule. But momentum does not wait for approval. The world rewards doers more than thinkers, executors more than planners. Knowledge is potential, action is power. And the distance between average and extraordinary is measured not by intention, but by what you actually do every single day. To take action is also to embrace responsibility. It is to accept that the outcomes, whether good or bad, are yours. The crowd seeks excuses. The few seek solutions. The crowd waits for opportunity to knock. The few build doors where none exist. And it is this difference, the difference between hesitation and execution, that separates the 95% from the 5% who shape the world. So act. Act boldly, act consistently, act now. The crowd will continue to talk, but your life will speak louder than their words. And in that act of doing, you not only step beyond average, you begin to carve a path so clear and powerful that others may one day follow, but only if they have the courage to act as you do. Once action becomes a habit, once the courage to step forward is established, a new and inevitable challenge arises: isolation and doubt. This is the crucible of anyone determined to break free from the crowd. The higher you rise, the fewer people will walk beside you. And it is here in this quiet, lonely space that true growth is tested and forged. Breaking away from the 95% is never a path of comfort. Most of the crowd lives in agreement because agreement feels safe. They may surround themselves with friends, routines, and traditions, but these are often invisible chains. When you step beyond what is familiar, when your standards, actions, and thinking no longer align with the group, you may feel the sting of solitude. Doubts emerge. Questions invade. Am I doing the right thing? Am I pushing too far? Am I alone in this struggle? This is precisely why persistence is essential. The crowd, after all, rewards conformity, not courage. It comforts those who drift, but it does not applaud those who fight. Isolation, therefore, is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of progress. It is the price one pays to rise above mediocrity. And it is in these moments, when external approval fades, that the inner voice of resolve must grow louder than ever. The extraordinary few understand that doubt is an inevitable companion of growth. They know that fear and uncertainty will not vanish. They must be embraced, observed, and acted upon anyway. They do not wait for confidence to arrive fully formed. They build it step by step, through action repeated even when it feels difficult. They persist because the alternative, returning to the crowd, shrinking back into average, is far less satisfying than continuing forward. History is filled with examples. Thomas Edison faced thousands of failed experiments before lighting the world. Amelia Earhart faced skepticism simply for daring to fly. Winston Churchill faced doubt and ridicule before leading a nation through its darkest hour. In each case, the individual persisted not because it was easy, but because they had decided that the path of courage was the only path worth taking. Persistence through isolation also strengthens character. It teaches patience, self-reliance, and the art of trusting oneself. When the noise of the crowd fades, when encouragement is scarce, when results are slow, persistence becomes the quiet engine that drives progress. It is during these solitary battles that resilience is forged and habits of excellence are cemented. The truth is simple: you will not always be understood. You may not always be appreciated. You may not even always be seen. But that does not matter. What matters is the life you are building, a life aligned with your own standard, not the approval of others. The path will feel lonely because it must. Greatness is rarely social. It is deliberate, disciplined, and often unseen in the early stages. So, lean into the discomfort. Persist through the isolation. Keep moving when doubt whispers that you should stop. For the person who refuses to turn back, who continues forward when others retreat, who persists when the world is silent, that person rises above the 95% and begins to live a life few dare to imagine. In this quiet struggle, you are not merely surviving. You are becoming unstoppable. You are proving to yourself that freedom, excellence, and extraordinary achievement are never given. They are earned step by step in the face of doubt, in the face of isolation, and in steadfast persistence. At last, after the long journey of awareness, questioning, separation, independent thinking, disciplined habits, courageous action, and persistent effort through isolation, a remarkable transformation occurs. This is the final step in breaking free from the 95%, becoming living proof of another way of life. Your life itself becomes a declaration, a demonstration, and an inspiration, not just to yourself, but to the world around you.